Chapter 17, The Pillars of Strength. The Greek psychologist Julia Samuel set out the key structures that support us to rebuild our lives through grief. She calls them the pillars of strength because they take work and persistence to build. By nurturing each of them, we gain a stable structure to help us through. The pillars of strength are listed below. Number 1 is a relationship with the one who died. When we lose a loved one, our relationship and love for that person does not end. Adapting to the loss includes finding new ways to feel close to the loved one. For example, visiting a special place that you shared and spending time at a grave or memorial. Alright, so number 2 is the relationship with self. Every other section in this book touches on self-awareness, and working through grief demands the same. And understanding our own coping mechanisms, finding ways to get support, and to look after our health and well-being throughout. We must listen to our own needs as best as we can along the way. Number 3 is expressing the grief. There's no correct way to express grief. If you prefer to do that through quiet reflection, memorials, or sharing with friends, the act of allowing yourself to feel whatever comes up and expressing that helps the natural process. When emotions are especially overwhelming, you can make use of the skills offered in Section 3 to help. Number 4 is time. Putting an expectation on how much time you should need for grief is setting yourself up for a struggle. When everything is overwhelming, it helps to focus only on each day as it comes until you feel strong enough to take a broader view of the future. Adding pressure to feel a certain way in a particular time frame only adds pain and distress. Number 5 is mind and body. As I covered in Section 1, our physical state, emotions, thoughts, and actions are like weaves in a basket. We cannot change one without influencing the other. This makes taking care of all those aspects of our experience even more important. Regular exercise, eating well, and ensuring we maintain some social contact with all helps us strengthen our mental health when we need it the most. Number 6, limits. When loved ones around us may be full of advice about how we should be managing and when we should be getting back into everyday life, remembering our capacity to hold boundaries becomes an essential tool. If we are building self-awareness and listening to our own needs, sometimes we need to put boundaries in place and maintain them in order to do what is best for our interest. Number 7, structure. I have spoken in previous chapters about our human need for balance between predictability and adventure, structure, and flexibility. When our mental health becomes vulnerable after a loss, it makes sense to offer a degree of flexibility that allows for grieving while also maintaining some level of structure and routine that helps prevent the deterioration of your mental health from the absence of healthy behaviors such as exercise and social contact. Number 8, focusing. When there are not enough words to describe the sensation that we feel, focusing our attention on simply observing our internal world and visualizing those sensations in the body can help to build awareness on our own shifts in emotional and physical state. Chapter summary. We can rebuild a life after a bereavement with time, work, and persistence. Create new ways that you can feel close to your loved one with a special place or memorial. Listen to your needs as much as you can along the way. There is no correct way to express grief. Drop any expectations about how much time you should spend grieving. Part 5 is on self-doubt. Alright, Chapter 18, dealing with criticism and disapproval. Criticism and disapproval is something that we all have to face at some point, but nobody ever really teaches us how to deal with it in a way that allows that feedback to enhance our life instead of just destroying our self-criticism. Even the anticipation of criticism or disapproval can be enough to cause a paralysis in our ability to strive for things that matter most to us. So not having the skills to deal with criticism or disapproval in a healthy way can cost you. Now this chapter is not about to tell you to just stop caring what anybody else thinks of you. In fact, we are built to care about how we are being perceived by those around us, Criticism can be a sign that we haven't lived up to the expectations in some way, and sometimes, but not always, can signal a risk of rejection or abandonment. So receiving criticism will naturally trigger your stress response. That response gears up, ready to do something about it. Historically, rejection from our community was a serious threat to our survival. These days, things are different in some ways, but similar in others. Rejection and loneliness continue to be a big threat to our health, and the brain continues to do its job of trying to keep us safe in a group. Beyond simply keeping us safe, our capacity to imagine what others think about us is a key skill that helps us to function in the social groups that we live in. We develop our sense of self and identity, not only from our own experience, but how we interact with others. But also through what we imagine those other people really think about us, the ideas and perceptions they might have about us. This is also called looking glass self. All right, so it makes sense that what I believe you think of me is going to influence what I do next. So when we try to tell ourselves to stop caring about what everybody else thinks, even if it feels a momentary boost, the impact of that is often short-lived at best. So people pleasing is more than just being nice to people. Anyone would recommend being nice to people. But people pleasing is a pattern of behavior in which you are consistently putting others before yourself, even to detriment your own health and well-being. It can leave us feeling unable to express our needs like likes and dislikes, and unable to hold boundaries and keep ourselves safe. We say yes when we actually want to say and need to say no. We feel resentful of being taken advantage of, but unable to change it by asking for anything different. And the fear of disapproval never disappears because there is always a possibility of putting a wrong foot, making a wrong choice, and displeasing someone. Even if that person is someone that we don't like or spend time with. While it is in all of us to care about the approval of our peers, people pleasing takes it much further. If we grow up in an environment in which it's not safe to disagree or express difference, if disapproval is expressed with rage and contempt, then as children we learn how to survive that environment, keeping other people happy because a survival skill that we hone and perfect through childhood. It is only later as adults that we learn that these behavior patterns are detrimental to our relationships. We start to second guess every move we make, always tentatively trying to work out what others are expecting of us. It may even prevent us from making new connections as we hold back on interactions when there is no guarantee that the other person likes us back. Living a life of people pleasing is further complicated by the fact that other people don't always voice their disapproval with criticism. We can fear and feel disapproval, even when the other person never says a word. When we don't have that information, our mind starts to fill in the blanks for us. The spotlight effect is a term originally coined by the Thomas Givovich and Kenneth Savitsky to describe the tendency of humans to overestimate how much others are focused on us. We are each at the center of our own spotlight of attention, and we tend to imagine that others are focused on us too, when in reality, everyone's spotlights are usually on themselves. So we often make the assumption that others are judging us negatively or disapproving when they may not be thinking of us at all. Those who feel socially anxious tend to focus their attention more on how they are being perceived by those around them. But those that feel more confident tend to have more of an outward focus of attention, leading with a curiosity for other people. So if we have this brain that is set up to care a great deal or what everyone else is thinking, or maybe we notice a tendency towards people-pleasing patterns, how do we live alongside that? How do we ensure that we can have those meaningful relationships but not become trapped by constantly worrying about disapproval and judgment. And how can we pick ourselves back up when disapproval from everyone else stops us from living in line with what matters to us? The task of dealing with criticism, building up the ability to tolerate the criticism that would be helpful and use it for our advantage while maintaining a sense of self-worth. Being open to learning from negative feedback that can help you to make progress. Learning to let go of criticisms that reflect the values of someone else rather than your own. Getting clarity on which opinions matter the most to you and why, so that it becomes easier to know when to reflect and learn, and when to let go and move on. Understanding people. Most people who are highly critical of others tend to be highly critical of themselves also. It can reflect the way that they have learned to speak to themselves and everyone else. They criticize because it is what they do, not necessarily because it is a reflection on your worthiness as a human being, especially when it comes a very personal attack on your character, as opposed to anything that could be in any way helpful to you on your path. As humans, we also have a tendency towards egocentric thinking, which can play out in our instance that other people live by the same values and obey the same rules that we have set for ourselves. This means that criticism can often be based on the critical person's view of the world, neglecting the fact that we all have different life experiences, values, and personalities. Understanding that people tend to criticize others based on their own rules for living is helpful to remember, especially for anyone that has a tendency towards people pleasing. We want everyone's approval, but if each person is unique in their own ideas and views, then we simply cannot please everyone all of the time. If we have a closer relationship with that person, then we are likely to value their opinions more, which can make the criticism more painful. But we also may have the insight to better understand what lies beyond the disapproval. Context is everything, but we don't always have access to it. When we don't have that context, it is much harder to see the criticism for what it is. One person's idea that is wrapped up in their own experiences. The natural instinct is to take on a criticism as a factual statement that says something about who we are and start to question our own self-worth. Self-nurturing. Not all criticism is bad. When feedback focuses on a specific behavior, we tend to feel guilty, which prompts us to correct our mistakes to repair the relationship. When criticism attacks our personality, our sense of worth as a person, we tend to feel that in the form of shame. Shame is the intensely painful feeling that can be mixed with other emotions like anger or disgust. It is different from embarrassment, which is less intense and tends to be felt in public. Shame is much more painful. We're unable to speak, think clearly, or do anything. We want to disappear and hide. The sheer intensity of the physical reaction makes it difficult to recover from. Shame triggers our threat system in such a way that it feels like someone held a match to all of our other emotions. So we get a rush of anger, fear, or disgust to go along with it. Then the self-attack comes swarming in like soldiers over a hill, coming at you with self-criticism, self-denigration, and blame. With that sort of onslaught, the instinct is to block it all out. But the shame is not easy to ignore. So we go for the most absorbing, addictive behaviors that offer instant relief. Shame resilience is something that we can learn, but it is a life practice. Building resilience to shame does not mean that you never feel it. Instead, it means that we learn how to dust ourselves off and get back up. Being able to experience shame and come back from it without losing your sense of worth involves getting to know what triggers shame for you. There are certain aspects of our lives and things that we do perceive to be a part of who we are. That may be parenting or physical appearance or creativity. Anything that you link to your self-worth can give rise to shame. In order to build and maintain a sense of self-worth, We need to understand that our worthiness as a human being is not dependent on living mistake free, reality checking the criticism and all the judgments that flow. Whether it comes from someone else or inside your own head, judgments and opinions are not facts. They are narratives and stories that can significantly change our experience of the world. So, looking after your self worth involves taking the name calling and personal attacks out of the equation and focusing on the specific concrete behaviors and their consequences. Reminding yourself that being imperfect, making mistakes, or failing is all a part of being human. Making friends for your fallibility means that when you do fail, you don't have to feel worthless. You can use each experience to your advantage by learning from it. Minding what you say. Criticism will always hurt a little. That is our brain doing its best to keep us safe. There's no antidote that makes it all okay forever and ever. Criticism's bouncing off of your armor. What use is armor anyway, when the worst critic is in your own head? A harsh comment or criticism can leave you feeling winded. Of course, naturally, you spend the next 5 hours rehearsing it in your head again. The brain wants to pay attention to it because it is a threat. But every time you go over it in your mind, the stress response is triggered again. So, one kick in the stomach can feel more like 100 kicks in the stomach. Time spent thinking over a helpful criticism that we can put to good use and adds to the work that we are doing in the world is time well spent. Ruminating and churning over a nasty comment with no sense of how it can help you is just a continuation of the attack on your character. Talking about yourself in the right way after a criticism. This is vital if you want to have the capacity to move through shame and bounce back. When we are in shame, we feel a sense of self-loathing, and we convince ourselves that there is no need to continue the attack. The idea of responding to ourselves with respect and compassion feels undeserved and indulgent, as if it would let you off the hook and stop bothering you to try harder. But in reality, if you want a man to get back up off the ground, you have to stop beating him. The key to using all criticism to your advantage is to have your own back, having so much self-compassion that you are able to listen to the criticism and decide which of that criticism you take on board and use it to your advantage as a learning experience, in which voices offer you nothing but dents in your self-esteem and crushed confidence. Talking about shame itself. Reaching out to someone that you trust and confide in them. Secrets, silence, and judgment intensify shame. Sharing our experience with someone who responds with empathy helps us to leave shame behind and move on. Understanding you. Living the life that you want to live in the face of criticism means getting clear on the opinions that truly matter to you and why. Whose opinions matter most to you. Saying I don't care what anybody thinks is rarely true and hides a world of insecurities. It stops us from creating meaningful connections with other people because it closes off any avenue of connection in which both voices matter. But the list of whose opinion truly matters needs to be small. It is also worth pointing out that acknowledging who matters does not mean it is your responsibility to please them. It just means that you are willing to listen to their feedback even when it's not praise, because you know it is likely to be honest and in your best interest, therefore most likely to be helpful. Why you do what you do. The one person you need the approval of is you. When the way we are living is out of line with our values and what matters most, life stops feeling meaningful and satisfying. Understanding the kind of person that you want to be and how you want to live your life, how you want to contribute to the world, is the road that you want to stay close to. When you know exactly who you are and who you want to be, it is much easier to choose which criticisms to take on board and which ones to let go. Where those familiar critical voices are really coming from, and where they are really warranted and helpful or detrimental to our well being. When there is someone in your life who is predictably critical, you hear their voice before they have even said anything. Over time, we internalize their constant criticism so that it becomes the way we speak to ourselves. So, we may be highly self critical because we have learned to be. Recognizing that we have learned the way of speaking to ourselves helps us to acknowledge that we can relearn a new internal dialogue that serves us better. Chapter summary. Learning the skills to deal with criticism and disapproval in a healthy way is a critical life skill. We are built to care about what others think of us, so telling ourselves that we don't care is not the answer. People pleasing is more than just being nice to people. It is the persistent placing of others' wants or needs above your own, even to the detriment of your own health and well being. Understanding why some people are highly critical helps. Nurturing your own self worth and resilience to shame is both possible and potentially life altering.